speaker is Sav Patel. We have two speakers. Mr. Steve Newby, who is an objector. Steve, will you come to the table, please? And Mr. Andy Thompson, who is the agent. Yes, if you will sit on the other side, thank you. So, over to Sav Patel.
Thank you, Chair. One moment. So just as an introduction, this application has been submitted by Cambridge Investment Partnership, which is a joint venture between Cambridge City Council and Hill Investment Partnership. The purpose of this partnership is to support the delivery of 500 new affordable homes within the city by developing council-owned land and other sites. So the proposal seeks planning permission to demolish all 11 existing above-ground buildings and structures currently on the site, subject to conditions. In red are all the buildings that are proposed to be demolished. I recommend a series of conditions to ensure that demolition work is carried out to mitigate the impact on the residential amenity of the surrounding occupiers, particularly those in Kingston Street and Hoop Street. There is a matter of further information that I need to provide, Chair. It relates to the ecology. The ecology officer in the original application requested or recommended an emergent bat survey to be carried out following the suggested evidence of a potential bat roost within the coach house building. Since the recommendation, I've spoken to the ecology officer. The suggested evidence was that there was a roof tile missing in one of the in part of this coach house building, and so it was suggested that on evidence that the potential for bats in this building were pretty low. So instead of a pre-commencement condition or predetermination condition, in terms of instead of requiring this emergency survey to be carried out prior to determination, the ecology officer has requested a condition for emergency bat survey to be carried out prior to demolition of the actual coach house building. So the wording of that condition is as follows: the coach house building along the western boundary of the site shall not be demolished until details of an emergency bat survey has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The demolition of the coach house building shall be carried out in accordance with any recommendations within the approved survey. Reason to ensure low risk of identified potential bat roost features being occupied is established at an appropriate survey time and ensure any necessary mitigation or a licence is in place prior to demolition. And just a matter of correctness, I've referred to the coach house building as being two-storey. There is in fact a single-storey element at the northern end of the coach house. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions, Chair. Thank you.
Very good. So, Mr. Thompson. Sorry, excuse me? Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. No, I'm at fault. So, we start with Mr. Newby.
Good morning. Hope everyone can hear me. My name's Steve Newby. I'm a resident at 20 Kingston Street in Cambridge, which directly backs onto the coach house that's been referred to earlier. I'm objecting to the application primarily because I'm seeking assurance about the method of demolition of the coach house on the western side of the site. As I said, it shares a party wall with a large number of properties on Kingston Street. The committee report recommends approval of the application subject to a condition that the demolition method is as stated in the create consultancy, demolition, noise, vibration and assessments, which is on page 195 of the report. This assessment mentions a method of demolition for the coach house on page 14, which contradicts the method of demolition stated in the actual demolition statement, which says the building to the western part of the site should be carefully split by hand. The method of demolition shown in the vibration assessment is somewhat different, where they're proposing to demolish part of the building mechanically and the remainder by hand. In my opinion, mechanical demolition of this building is highly likely to result in damage to Kingston Street residents' properties. And at this point, I understand it will become a civil matter between residents and the developers, which is not really in the interest of the developers or the residents. So by carefully demolishing this building by hand, these problems could be avoided. So I'm therefore requesting that condition 4 is amended to stipulate that the coach house in its entirety should be demolished by hand and not by mechanical means. Thank you.
Mr. Andy Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the committee to the proposed redevelopment of this site and to the Cambridge Investment Partnership. As Sam's already mentioned, the investment partnership is an equal partnership between the City Council and Hill Investment Partnerships, and is supporting the Council to deliver 500 new affordable homes across the city by developing council-owned land and other sites. This site will deliver a high proportion of these 500 affordable homes, and we are keen to move forward as fast as possible. The proposed redevelopment of this site has been anticipated for many years and has been subject to extensive public consultations. A planning and development brief was prepared and approved for adoption in March last year. Subsequently, there have been 2 public exhibitions on the emerging proposals, as well as extensive consultations with a full range of council officers and other interested parties. This application is the first of 3 that will come before this committee for this site, and is for the demolition of the various buildings. The next application will be for the residential development of 182 dwellings, of which 50% will be affordable. The final application will be for a new YMCA building and community facilities, alongside additional dedicated space for local community organisations. This application has been brought forward in advance of the other applications to allow the buildings on site to be demolished as they become vacant in the coming months. As this site has long been in industrial use, an extensive programme of demolition and remediation is required. For the past few months, we've been in discussion with your office in your environmental services team to agree the scope and strategy for demolition and remediation of the site. This work will be carefully managed in close liaison with your officers, especially in the most contaminated areas, to ensure they are satisfied as works progress. Cambridge Investment Partnership will see the development through from start to finish, overseeing and managing the demolition through to the completion of the new homes. This way we can guarantee that the agreed protocols are followed and ensure these new homes are delivered as soon as possible to help relieve the demand for new housing in the city. In summary, the aim of this application is to enable demolition and remediation works to commence ahead of the residential application being determined. We are pleased to note there are no substantiated objections to proposed demolition, and can confirm we are working with your officers to provide them this information to allow the conditions to be discharged. Can I perhaps just pick up very briefly on the point made by Mr. Newby in terms of the demolition? We intend to...
13, carry on.
I say the intention is to reduce the wall to no lower than 2 metres, but this will be subject to agreement with the adjoining neighbours through party wall agreements. Where the height of the wall will be retained at existing height or lower, we will obviously need to make sure there's sufficient engineering support on the outside wall to ensure that will remain structurally sound. In terms of the means of demolition, I'm sure that's a matter that we can agree. In terms of the satellite demolition, I'm sure we can capture that within the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I've got to begin the questioning. The application is for the demolition of the buildings on the existing site. but Mr. Thompson has referred repeatedly to demolition and remediation. My question really is that, bearing in mind what happened on West Garage side and the problems of remediation that occurred there, at what point do we have the ability to authorise remedial measures which might involve very considerable digging and exploration, and the possible dangers that might be associated with that process, such that West Garage So, I mean, it's a question for the officer in due course. There's no need to answer it now. Are there members who wish to speak? Councillor Blanco.
Yeah, I mean, obviously staff can respond to that point you made, Chair, but I alluded from the, understood from what was said that actually the concrete bases underneath some of these structures will clearly have to be removed. I would suggest that be part of removal of the structure, and that clearly, when you've got pretty thick concrete bases, they do take some removal, but I would have thought that would be covered, and that was part of the remediation I thought was being referred to, but Sam might correct me. I think the condition 7, if it can obviously take into account the point about the rear wall, I don't accept the rest of the couch house to be demolished by hand. Sorry, I mean, you know, we've moved on a little bit in building and demolition works over the years, and I think take 3 walls down and leave one, and then for that one to be taken down by hand is normal practice if they wish to do so. I would hope that most of these materials will be recycled anyway. I'll make a final point about, as an informative, I'm sure I don't need to say this, but I will. I would sincerely hope that this would be subject to the considerate contractor scheme that we run as a city council, and that we would fully expect this applicant to subscribe to that, even if it's for demolition, because that is an accepted criteria.
It is, of course, unusual for a separate application for demolition of this kind on a major site to come forward without at least an outline of the possible development which is envisaged. But in this instance, the developers are not yet in a position to produce such an outline, and they wish to begin work on the clearing of the site. So I think we fully understand the reason why this has come forward as a separate demolition application. Sam. Yes, Martin.
Thanks, John. Firstly, it says in 10, condition 10, that no demolition take place until the traffic management plan is in place. So just on that, I'm presuming that all of the demolition vehicles are going to go off Mill Road into the site. And I'm concerned about that traffic management plan is robust enough to work for the area, because it's a very busy road, Mill Road. There's lots of cycles on it. And rubble lorries, as they might be called, often the argument goes that because they go on and off dumps to get rid of the stuff, that they don't have the panels on the side to protect cyclists going underneath the wheels. Really the argument for that is very weak these days, because most sites where you get rid of rubbish are in fact flat, you don't need to have that measure taken away. So I would hope that there would be a robust management plan for those lorries, both in terms of their approach along Mill Road, and because they're going to turn left or right, especially the left turn if you're going along Mill Road out of town. Potentially you can have cyclists on your left-hand side, and people have died in London going underneath lorries, and I wouldn't want any accident to happen in this particular case with a cyclist. So that's one thing. And relatedly, I think the plan hopefully will talk about when those lorries should be going along Mill Road, and ideally they shouldn't be going along Mill Road during the peak time congestion times in this city, morning and afternoon. they should be travelling at other times of day and night to, well, not night, but later in the day perhaps, when it's less busy and it will have less effect and there'll be less concerns about any accident. The other point I want to make is about bats. I find that a bit of an odd one. Maybe the officer could enlighten me a bit more, but it seems that if bats are present, then of course that we deal with that, and that's very much a concern. But if bats are not seen to be present, I don't quite see why we're making any sort of allowance for bats that might be present. Are we going to do that for every building site that we work on? I don't think that's a reasonable condition at all, and I think it shouldn't be there. And I'd like to be told why it should be there, because so far the officer hasn't convinced me at all of that.
Yeah, that one.
So, Sam, you've got, Damien Tunner.
Yeah, just a small point. Councillor Blanco, in his little speech, mentioned recycling of materials, and something that's rather close to my heart. And I don't know if we could put in a condition whereby these very valuable bricks and other materials are recycled rather than just go to dumps.
Sam Patel.
Thanks, Chair. So just responding first to your point, Chair, about the remediation issue with regards to the site. I have actually, well, the Environmental Services team have looked at this very carefully because of the issues that we've had in the past. And condition 8 of the consent does talk specifically about the hard standing on the site and ensuring that that is removed in order to prevent any rupturing of any underground fuel tanks or storage tanks. So they've asked, essentially the conditions ask for a methodology of the removal of those hard standing areas prior to any demolition to be carried out. And with regards to Councillor Blanco's point, I consider a contractor informative hasn't been placed on this decision of site. It is something that I could do. We do have an informative for it, so that could be done. Regarding the points raised by Councillor Smart, yes, the condition 10 is there specifically for these sort of issues where contracted vehicles and building materials are delivered and taken off the site. And it is this condition then will then agree the strategy where, in terms of the routes that those vehicles will take. Clearly there's only one route into the site at the moment, and that is from Mill Road. And given that Mill Road is a very busy, as you say, route into and out of the city centre, that management plan will need to be carefully looked at and considered to ensure that vehicles. Well, the other point I suppose is that the condition 2 talks about restricting, condition 2 and 3 talk about restricting the hours of demolition and also when collection and delivery of vehicles can operate. So that will limit that vehicle movement, but in terms of the strategy for how where vehicles turn in and out of the site, that will need to be agreed as part of condition 10. With regards to the BAT report, yes, sorry, I did get a bit flustered with that one. It's something that clearly needs to be taken very seriously because of bats are obviously protected species, and the ecology survey that was carried out, the phase 1 survey, did demonstrate that there was the potential evidence of a bat or bats within the coach house building, and having consulted with the ecology officer, they had requested this condition originally for a emergent survey to be carried out. Having spoken to them again about the impact that would have on the timing of the demolition programme and such work, he agreed that if we could control it so that it just related to where the evidence was possibly found in terms of the coach house building, so that all the other buildings could be demolished, and then the coach house building, which is likely to be the last building to be demolished anyway because of the boundary wall issue with the neighbours. So I think the condition that has been worded would ensure that proper investigation of that building has been carried out in terms of that, without delaying or unduly delaying demolition of the rest of the buildings on the site.
Councillor Smart.
So I want to press that issue because, I mean, the officer has said the evidence was found, but there's no evidence, is there? It's a suspicion that there might be bats present. So we don't have any evidence. I think there shouldn't be a condition.
Can I just ask one other? I mean, I think that's a question you need to answer, but I'm looking at the conditions, and some of them, I'm not sure whether all of them, but some of them seem to presuppose that this is more than an application simply for demolition, that it's actually about construction as well. For example, condition 6, prior to the commencement of development construction, a noise insulation scheme is, and all of that. It's all about protecting residents from high levels of noise. Why is that condition? There are no residents. There will be no residents on site. So why is that condition in there? And there are several other conditions. Am I on the wrong page?
Yeah, the wrong page.
No, right down. Right.
96.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry.
I'm so sorry. I've turned over several pages. Withdrawn. Councillor Smart.
Sorry, Chair, I just want to make one further point, and I mean, I'm making this point because I think we need to look at this very closely because it is partly to do with Cambridge City Council and working with the councillors.
Yeah.
And I think it's extremely important what I said earlier about the traffic management plan that works and is robust, because this is a very busy street, and we all know that when the development that the city plan to do comes forward for the housing on the site, the traffic will be a big consideration of that project and traffic movements to and fro. And if we can demolish the site satisfactorily without any problems, then that's going to be a problem going forward. Some anecdotal evidence.
Yes.
So I think it really needs to be everything needs to go very smoothly with this project. And this is a critical part of it, the traffic movements on and off site.
Right, so I think you've got 2 points to come back on.
So with regards to the bat survey, the ecology report suggests there's the potential evidence of bats, and in order to determine whether that potential evidence is bats present is there or not, is that this emergent survey needs to be carried out. So in order to prove that there are no bats, you need to do this survey.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just regarding, going back to that point about the traffic management plan, I completely agree. It is a really big issue, and obviously it's something that we will be consulting with in terms of when we get the information in with the county council to ensure that sufficient safeguards, I suppose, were in place to mitigate any highway safety issues.
Through you, Chair, could I add a point on
Yes,
that?
yes.
I wonder whether we could put an informative on that relates to condition 10 and says something along the lines of, notwithstanding the time specified in condition 3, the traffic management plan shall include details of the timing of buildings associated with the demolition works themselves, or some way of kind of expanding on that so that we can secure it through the traffic management plan. I think would be sensible, because that condition 3 is a fairly standard one, and I think we can specific about it. I don't want to change condition 3, but I think that could be referred to in the traffic management plan. And also, while I've got the floor, at the bottom of page 197, there's a paragraph that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, which I think is stuck in. So if you could delete paragraph 10.2, please. And a final point, I think Sarah's probably going to mention this as well, but in terms of recycled materials, we could put informative on again in terms of reuse or recycling, not reuse, but sustainable use of materials that are on the site, something along those lines. But I don't think it's something we could do by condition.
Okay.
So the application is recommended for approval, subject to the amendment of condition 3 as specified by Sarah.
10.
10.
It was an informative.
Oh, and informative. With respect to the traffic management plan. Those in favour of that decision, please indicate. That's unanimous. Thank you. I see you again here at 1:45.